Hello, my name is Professor Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin, and I will be talking about the design thesis within the aspect of community and nation building. Now, this design thesis concentrates or is within the aspect of what is termed as community and nation building. I will talk about what I mean by the idea of community and nation building in the political sense, as well as in the architectural aspects of how a design thesis could be laid out. Now, what is nation building? Nation building is just the pledge of each community group to be a bigger family of state and country. In other words, we could have, say, the Malay community group, which is already its own. Then it is to be mixed with the Chinese community group or the Indian community group or the Orang Asli community group, and later on the Kadazan community group as well as the Iban community group. And this then forms what is called a nation. And a nation also has what is called state and country. Now, what is required in building a nation is that each community which honors its own heritage, culture, and faith must also respect and honor the culture, heritage, and faith of all the other communities in the nation. Now, sometimes this is easier said than done because there are mistrust, there are misunderstanding, there are opportunism, which then breaks down the society as what we in Malaysia have become nowadays. So we need to look at why is this breakdown happening. In this talk, I will give my own reasons and also how architecture can actually help to forge this idea of what's known as nation. Now, what is the main problem of nation building politically? Number one, you have community ignorance, meaning each community still don't want to know about the other community. For instance, the Muslim community doesn't want to know about the Christian community. Why? Because some of its cleric might say, oh, if you know Christian, then you will be converted to Christianity. So better not to know. Now, other communities perhaps also mean the same. So here we have also individual opportunism, meaning some people nowadays with the social media wanting to have more viewers are propagating the idea of a divisive society by playing on certain issues that will definitely break up the society and give popularity to them. Political parties as well as political individuals also have their own agendas in winning votes. We have certain parties trying to frighten one particular race, like the Malays, into saying that other people are going to gang up on you and take over the country. So you must support us because we are of one race group or one religious faith. So that is going to have huge problem. Organic conflicts are conflicts that happen by itself, but most of the time, these organic conflicts then turn into political opportunism, where the political individual take use of it in terms of his or her own party. One of the good example is the recent KK Mart stalking issue. Now, how to resolve these outstanding issues of nation? Number one, we need a new education system. Our education system is, I have written many times that it is expired, it is useless. Much of the school system is, and I think most of the university system also bears the same mark of expiration in terms of its use. So we are in the what I call an industry-based education, whether in school or in the university, and therefore the human aspect is lost totally. And that is why we cannot build a good nation, because it then foster mistrust and misunderstanding as well as ignorance of each other. We can have individual and community efforts to actually bring us closer together. There is also some NGO who's I'm also involved in to actually explain things and bring people together. We have the Rukun Negara that was forged after the May 13 riots. And then we have issues of muhibbah, patriotism, something that the government has tried to instill the spirit, what I call the spirit of camaraderie, the spirit of togetherness, but I don't think it's being very successful at the moment. Now, how does architecture play within this realm? Now, when we talk about architecture, one of the things that we should look at is also the building types. Now, the building types that relate directly to nation building are, from my perspective, number one, the municipal buildings. Number two, the parliament buildings. Number three, the community centers. You have schools, universities, public buildings, houses of worship, heritage conservation, memorial. All this relate to the idea of the politics and the social aspect of nation building. We also have issues like conservation like the recent issue of the Kampung China, and then the idea of community identity within the perspective of memorial. Memorial meaning an event or something that has occurred, which is very important to identify a community that needs to have an architectural treatment to ensure its longevity and also perseverance and existence. We also have issues of community interaction. So many of our communities are in silos. Aman Saujana is all Malay, and this other place, Sri Petaling, is all mostly non-Malays. And this then becomes a problem. How do we then come together? Maybe we come together at the shopping complex, but the shopping complex is only designed to shop, but not to interact. So that can be an opportunity. Symbols and identity, the food, the history, the artifacts, the spaces, the things that are important within that particular traditional culture can then be identified, integrated within architecture, which gives a sense of community. Rituals and traditions, education and galleries, how to treat poverty will also create this idea of a community identity. With regards to the larger part of nation, we also have memorial, meaning part of the history of the country, the Independence Day, certain treaty being signed, the Bukit Kepong incident, where the death of the many policemen to defend the country from communism. The idea of democracy, what is democracy? It's about people owning the country, and how does that is reflected in a certain building like the parliament or the Dewan Undangan Negeri or state secretariat, things like that. Now state secretariat are designed like a palace. Why should it be doing that? People-centered leadership means you can access to the leaders. How do you access to the leaders? The municipalities are the administrative centers of the place. The houses of worship are the centers of each of the community. How then we have this access, common spaces for us to meet, and this requires new design. The old design are all administrative. It's all for the administrators. The administrators are kings, which in fact they are not. They are servants. So this political understanding needs to be drilled into us so that we can have a different design. The idea of humility of the leadership and as well as the administrators and the civil servants to actually serve the people rather than control or be an authority of. And that can be translated into architecture how? Spaces, scale, massing, volumes. Patriotic symbolism are something that binds us together. And it is transcending race, religion, as well as culture. People participation. political participation in helping the pandemic, helping with the pandemic issue and the flood issue that we see people coming together, the poverty issue. So how does this work into a society in terms of buildings or urban spaces and things like that? Here are some examples of issues in the design thesis. The municipality belongs to the people and therefore could be designed as a community center. Now, as I said, it's not. It's designed as a palace or as a purely administrative center to control, but not to have a friendly relationship with the people. You have library and education center for homeless and street citizens. There are people. What do we do with the homeless and street citizens? We need to treat them with honor and dignity. And so what are the facilities that we can give? If we fail to do that in Islam, then you are answerable to God. But in Malaysia, then you are answerable also to the idea of, well, who are we as Malaysians? These people have blue IC card, but they don't have home. So how do we help them? How do we get the government, who's supposed to be a compassionate Madani government, to actually build something? Common spaces and welfare places for houses of worship, something which is very controversial, it is said, when in fact it is not. All religions usually come from the same source. All of them practices certain similar values, but administration, power, wrong narration of history makes each religion enemies of one another. This is not the right way to proceed. Anwar Ibrahim says we have to accept the differences, the faith, and honor all the belief. So how do we then create new houses of worship that has common spaces for us to interact while also understanding the context of the sensitivity between the religion as well as respecting certain part of the religious aspect which needs to have certain kind of privacy. The issue of security also comes to play. We see in other countries recently the Russian church being attacked by suspected Muslim terrorists. This is also another interesting design thesis. The incident of the mosque shooting in New Zealand at one time. How do you be open? How do you be friendly? But then how do you have security? That is another issue. How do you build community? But then you also have some sort of sense of security. Urban food farms for B40. How to have this idea of managing and having housing, but also having farms to have food, because food is a major problem in this country. The Tondok Mata Mahathir left this and didn't really care about it because he wants to go totally industrialized. It's not his fault, but it is his fault when some other people continue it without actually rethinking about stuff and in terms of its food production, whether we have enough or not. A campus for the community, a community that is in the campus. This is something which is about education. Education is not an elitist affair. Education is a common affair, and a common affair of social change, of agent of social change, rather than just something for feeding the industry. We have a parliament of the people, by the people, and for the people, which is what Abraham Lincoln said. But how is it reflected? Look at the parliament, look at the Dewan Undangan Negeri. Is it for the people, by the people, and of the people? And how do we design that? Frank Lloyd Wright has a lot of things to say, although he was only allowed to design one building, which is the Marine Civic County, the only one. Study that, look at it, transfer it into architecture for Malaysia, and you have a new model of administrative building. Then we have an urban reading room, learning centers. Why must we design libraries so big, so grand? We can have maybe a series of different kind of libraries, toy libraries, children libraries, adult libraries, teenager libraries, but then it's spread out, or it is into one single room, like a village. These are possible things. A music street gallery, how do we look at music? During the pandemic, those who were in the music industry was not given help by the, what's his name, Minister of Finance, Zafro. Yeah. Obviously, because he comes from the banking community, doesn't know anything about music, art, and so he is unappreciative of this. But we need to teach him a lesson in that this is also important part of the soul. Feeding is not just the stomach, also the soul and the mind. So the mind are the books and the libraries, the soul are the music, the stories, and the values, and the stomach are the food. So all of these are part of the thesis that can be done if one were to look at it carefully. Redefining the traditional pasar, now we all have all these hypermarket, supermarket. Where is the traditional pasar? In Kelantan, they still have the traditional pasar. How do we relieve this idea with some kind of introduction of certain modern technology that will still help the idea of keeping the cost down for the ordinary people to have the pasar and have all this the ritual parts and things like that, rather than this common monstrosity of hypermarkets like IOI Mall and also the Tesco and Giant. I actually like the Aeon in Cheras because it was designed in the state in the manner of streets. It has squares, it has places. It can do with a more traditional and cultural aspect to be added on, and then it becomes a real Malaysian model. Others are just warehouses with air conditioning. New graduate shelter towers, meaning how do you help the graduates who's just graduating and only with very small pay, and how do they then live, survive, and work? What is the different way of working in the hybrid manner, and this new shelter towers, or what I call beehive architecture, that is temporary for them, and how can we actually help yourself when you graduate, to suggest to maybe Anwar Ibrahim that we need a different kind of shelters rather than housing. Housing is defined differently, but shelters is something that we can define ourselves. The family resort is a resort designed for family. What does that mean? Bringing family closer. We know that families now are separated, with all people looking at their gadgets. Wherever you go, to restaurants, to everywhere, you see everyone from the 5-year-old to the 50-year-old to the 85-year-old, everybody having gadgets. How do you bring them closer together? Maybe in an adventure family resort, maybe a place that is more meditative, or something that a treasure hunt kind of a thing. That would be something that is interesting. A panic room situation that is expanded to a larger aspect. Something like what was once in a series in the TV series called Fantasy Island. So how do you play act a story that is given to you, and then how it pans out? This is something that can be actually a thought of. A city meditation oasis. The city is so busy with all these things. What are the oasis that is considered? Like a barren, see, the city is like a barren land of sand without water, but then there is this oasis. Here is all the hustle and bustle and concrete and glass and steel. But what is this oasis? Where do we slow down? Where do we meditate? Where do we find peace? If we don't do that, then the body is going to wear out very fast. You're gonna going there, very busy here, busy sana, everything's busy. Okay, and you're gonna dig yourself to an early grave. Well, then how do we not dig ourselves to an early grave? By having this kind of courses. Now, coming to the end, I just like to show that I also have other YouTube, like what is the architecture design thesis. It's in an hour, talk about the technical aspect of the thesis. Then I have a series of talks about some of the design of what my student had done in UTM in the previous time. That one was the expanding mosque, how does the mosque to be designed in terms of its organic ability to expand. Organic meaning function, technical meaning how does it do that without hacking of walls and replacing permanent structures and things like that. Then we have the thesis about the mosque that is sustainable economically and also a welfare place. A mosque is not supposed to be a grand building. A mosque is supposed to be a welfare building for the community. Those who are homeless can actually stay there. But then how can the mosque economically make itself money to also sustain this kind of thing? So it's a new idea rather than what is now being paraded with domes and minaret. For me, these are useless mosque architecture because it doesn't do anything in religion. It's just for somebody's ego and it's grand to appease certain people. I know enough of what the Prophet has said to show that these are the wrong kind of mosque for Islam. Then we have the mosque that is this is not a mosque, it's an urban vertical pondok, which is a madrasah or a pesantren or a pondok school, which is the traditional pondok, which is usually in the jungle, somewhere very isolated. And now I ask that it be put in the middle of the city. Now, how does it manage the idea of privacy, religious values, while there is a whole hustle and bustle of the city thronging through the building? The building is part of a thoroughfare of pedestrians from an MRT to their way of life and passing right in the middle of this urban madrasa. A very exciting thesis. In conclusion, I would like to say that a state is just a machine for administration. That's what a state is, means it has a certain kind of organization. A country is about mountains, rivers, and jungles. That's the geographical, physical aspect. A place is of buildings, streets, towers, and memories with all these things. But a nation is the values that the people hold commonly and interpreted within each community. Architecture of community and nation is an architecture that reminds who we are, how we interact, and where we wish to go into the future. So welcome to the Community and Nation Building Group. These are some of the things that we will be looking into. With that, thank you very much.